Welcome back to the buyingrealestateblog.com. I'm Jason Fleming with Keller Williams Realty and Group 4610, and I'm joined today with Patrick Richie. He is the author of The Credit Roadmap, and he's also a GRI instructor of finance, or GRI finance instructor for the Arizona Association of Realtors. I invited Patrick on here to speak with our viewers here because he's an expert in the world of credit and understanding credit. Credit is so key to our lives these days. It affects so many different areas, and there's a lot of you that have a lot of questions about what you can do with your situation. There's a lot of hurting people in this economy, and they're trying to rebuild their lives. So we've gone over a few things over the past few days, and some of the other questions that have come up have been around, I've got this credit score and I got a bunch of stuff on it that I wish I wasn't there. What can I do to clean that up?
Well, and I think the best thing, once somebody looks at their credit report, is to assess, do I recognize everything that's on there? Number one, if there's something on there that I do not recognize, I need to try to answer the question of, is this mine or is this a mistake? And sometimes we get fuzzy memory, and generally speaking, think in terms of the most likely account that's going to be on somebody's credit report that's going to be derogatory is going to probably be a collection. I see this with people who have fantastic credit, who have always had great credit. It doesn't really matter the history. The collections just seem to come out of the blue. And a good example of that, I think it's 42 or 43% of all collections are medically related.
Wow.
I think we've all dealt with some sort of medical billing error at some point in time, or some oversight. Perhaps it's poor billing, we don't get the bill. So generally it is medically related, whether it was some sort of copay that was missed, or we just never got the bill, whatever the case may be, or just the insurance company didn't pay the claim. So that's the most common. So looking for that type of stuff. And then you get some of the other types of collections. Here's a very unique one. When the public library sends an account to collection, if you actually read the terms of the agreement you make with the library, generally speaking, after 35 days, if you become 35 days overdue, you will generally be turned over to a collection agency, which will then in turn report to the credit bureaus. It's generally an amount of $60. And who I see this impact the most is generally parents who have minor children who maybe can't get a library card on their own, so the parents have to sign for it. They're the responsible party because you can't sue somebody under the age of 18. So what ends up happening is mom and dad end up with this on their credit report because maybe it just fell through the cracks, maybe they didn't know, whatever the case may be. So generally it's stuff that just kind of appears that if somebody knew that they owed some money, they would have just wrote a check for it and paid for it. So a lot of times it's oversights. So getting through that, seeing if that's there, making sure. Another big one would be, let's say I pay my car in full. I make the last payment, or I've got 4 months to go, and I write a check to cover the last 4 months. Making sure to go back and make sure that those are actually reflecting as zero balance. Making sure that those are paid. Making sure, back to the collections, if I do figure out that I owe money on a collection, I need to pay it, but I need to try to pay with a personal check if at all possible, because I may have to prove at a later point that I've already paid this. Sometimes these collections get transferred to another collection agency, and so maybe I end up paying the wrong collection agency, so I may have to prove that I've paid it. It can be a big mess.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, and once I pay it, or maybe I settle for half. Keep in mind, a collection can't stay on the credit report beyond 7 years from the first report. So it has this inherent limitation in terms of, number one, the debt. You've got the statute of limitations on how long somebody can sue me for the debt, depending on the state. But in the credit report, one of the nice things about the Fair Credit Reporting Act is that all debts have some sort of a limitation. So the collection can only stay there for 7 years, which brings me to another point. I highly recommend always saving a copy of the credit report, simply because it's possible that information could be changed or manipulated. The bad debt market is a very, very large industry, and so there's definitely great motivation in terms of changing dates perhaps, and there have been collection agencies who have been caught in the past. You can actually read some of that on the FTC website, since they would be the enforcement agency for that. So saving the credit reports is a good idea. Making sure I recognize everything, making sure that there's not any late payments on any of my active accounts, making sure there's not any fraudulent accounts, making sure there's not a credit card that's not mine, something of that nature, making sure that I don't have something crossing over because there's somebody with a similar name, or maybe they've got a social security number that's pretty close to mine, looking for that type of stuff on a credit report. And if I do discover something, and whether it's a matter of this collection has been paid or it's been satisfied because I settled on it, whatever the case may be, just sending a letter to all 3 credit bureaus. I want to do it to all 3 of them. So Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. I want to write a letter to all 3 of them. Any evidence that I might have, I would want to include that, a copy of that. So if I have a copy of a canceled check, if I ever pay a debt, a bad debt, my recommendation is to get a canceled check and hold on to that, because I might have to pull that back out. Another common one is the cable company. If I were to move and I have a DVR or I have an internet modem, any type of equipment from the cable company, I am going to hand deliver that to the cable company. I'm going to take that receipt and I'm going to save it like it's 4 $100 bills, because that's the collection that will show up if for some reason it doesn't go into their system as being returned. So I see those types of collections on credit reports all the time. So we have to really know that in that world of who has the power in the creditor debtor relationship, well, it's always the creditor, because they have the ability to report things on us, about us on our credit report, which then harms us, whether it's trying to borrow money, trying to get insurance, which can factor in the credit scoring, or trying to get a job, whatever the case may be, until we can prove otherwise. So it's basically our word against theirs, and that can be problematic, and sometimes we don't have any documentation. So it's very important to always think in those terms of how can I document this, but keeping track of my credit, at least looking at it at least once a year, and then saving copies of those credit reports. That's my advice.
Excellent. So whenever, let's say that you find something that's on your credit report that you don't believe that's yours, how long do the credit reports have to fix a mistake once you send that to them?
They have 30 days from when I contact them to do their investigation. They then contact the creditor and say, okay, this consumer is disputing the information that's been reported on the credit report. So then the creditor has 30 days to respond. So the whole process is about 30 days. Now, it's not uncommon, because keep in mind, I am going to dispute with all 3 of the credit bureaus. It's not uncommon for, let's say, that 2 of the credit bureaus go ahead and correct the error. But then 1 of the credit bureaus does not. So this is where it can get a little frustrating, because you're dealing with compliance issues, because that 30 days comes from the Fair Credit Reporting Act. They're under compliance to operate within that period of time. So if I'm under the compliance gun, I may be tempted to just rubber stamp it as denied, to remain in compliance rather than actually doing a full-fledged investigation. There's that outside possibility. There's other possibilities, of course, but sometimes that does happen. So 2 maybe will correct it, 1 will not. My advice would then be re-dispute, send a copy of the correspondence from the 2 that did correct it, and say, all right, well, these 2 credit bureaus have corrected it. Please reinvestigate this, and just go through the process again. But now get more documentation and show, look, 2 of them have already figured it out, or 1 of them has already figured it out. Why haven't you? Just kind of going from that standpoint. So being diligent, being patient, and that goes to, here's the other thing. If I know I'm going to need my credit, I should not wait till the last minute. I should be doing this as soon as I possibly can. If somebody starts looking into the stuff at least 6 months before they need their credit, I mean, you can do it in less time, but I at least know I have plenty of time to get this stuff resolved if I'm 6 months ahead of when I might need it. So thinking about it from that standpoint.
Because you don't know what you don't know. So if you're looking at buying a home in the next 6 months, grab a copy of your credit report now. Go to annualcreditreport.com and get a copy. Contact a mortgage broker, have them pull your credit, get a copy of that so that you can start to mend anything that needs to be mended, so that when your time does come to purchase a house or a car or whatever, that you're ready to do so. Well, that's all the time that we have today. So check back with us tomorrow. Patrick Richie's going to be back with us again, going over this idea of, or this world of credit, and helping us understand it a little bit better. If you guys are interested in contacting Patrick to learn a little bit more about how you can help your credit situation, I'm going to go ahead and post his contact information just below the video here. If you're looking at buying a home or selling a home, we want to get a book in your hands. There's 2 books to choose from. This month we are giving away Your First Home and also The Millionaire Real Estate Investor. Both of these books are fantastic books, written by Gary Keller, who was a New York Times bestseller. He's also the founder of Keller Williams Realty. We'd like to put those in your hands so that you can begin to educate yourself and really understand what you're getting into, whether you're buying a home or whether you're going to invest in a home or whether you're going to sell a home. It's important information as well. So thanks so much for stopping in, and we'll see you again soon.